This is Your Other Brothers Podcast.
Sorta.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Corona ConvoCast, an extension of Your Other Brothers. We are a community navigating faith, homosexuality, masculinity, and coronavirus together. I'm your host, Tom, and I'm so glad you're here on the heels of having a brand new podcaster conversation with Daniel. We have another here today with someone who is quite prolific, actually. He's written some of the most engaging content we've ever put out on yourotherbrothers.com, and he's coming us from the mid-best. It's our other brother, Eugene. What's up, Eugene?
Hey, Tom. Glad to be here finally. Boy, I went through some extreme measures to finally be featured on the podcast.
You know, it only took a pandemic for you to be here today, Eugene. So thank you.
Pretty much. Worth it, I guess. I don't know.
And can you specify where in the Midwest exactly you are coming at us from here today?
Oh, yeah. Well, I live in St. Louis, Missouri. And that's where I'm coming to your life from. And around here, there's no like lockdowns or anything. It's mainly just kind of, it's just kind of more of a stay-at-home thing. And, so mostly, sadly, my work closed. And I'm on unemployment. And I'm just trying to pull the time with whatever I can do, mainly trying to go on a lot of walks. But now St. Louis County has been, trying to, it's been closing a lot of the parks lately. So it's been, harder and harder to find, any place to walk around at and get any outdoor time. So
that is the worst. It's happening here in Asheville. I'm sure it's happening all over the country too, that parks, like places where we can go to escape a little bit and catch our breath and get literal fresh air, are being closed down. And I get why they're doing it, but still, it's like, it's the worst. Where can we go?
Yeah. Same here. I mean, like, thankfully, like, mainly it's just the county parks that close. There are still like other parks that are like, owned by like the Missouri Conservation Department that are still open with trails and everything. So there are at least those, but not many options though.
Well, I'm so glad you're here today, Eugene. And I was hoping you would say this in your description of where you live. But yeah, St. Louis, you are coming at us from the side B capital of the world.
Right.
There are undoubtedly so many people listening right now from your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. St. Louis, side B capital.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. That's been the thing that's been so crazy. It's just like, ever since I joined YOB way back when, and suddenly, I started reaching out, seeing if there were maybe similar like-minded folks in the area, and I got way more than I bargained for. It turned out this is kind of like the ground zero, the whole side B thing, at the Revoice conference, and all these folks that live here, and it's just suddenly like, whoa, this is just boring old St. Louis where I was born and raised. Why is it all of a sudden, this big hotspot of like, this huge part of my life all of a sudden? So, I'm like, well, I'll take it. So it's been pretty cool.
Well, you mentioned Revoice, and I'm actually curious. Have you heard anything about whether the conference is still a go? I know everything's been canceled so far these last couple months, and probably the next few months to come. So I don't know if you've heard anything. I was definitely curious about that.
Last I heard, it was still going. It was still a go because, this year it's very much like the first one back in 2018, where it's at the end of July sometime instead of early June like it was last year. So, July is still a long way off. And I guess at this point, there's, it's still uncertain. But they said, they're, as far as I know, they're still planning on going. I mean, I guess it depends on how things look a couple months from now, that maybe we might hear more.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see. I'm definitely hopeful. It's good timing, end of July versus beginning of June. Because I think if it was last year, beginning of June, that'd probably be tough to swing at this point. But hopefully that buys enough time for it to still happen. But yeah, anyway, because you're new, Eugene, I'm sure a lot of people listening have no idea who you are. Maybe they do. Maybe they've read your blogs, but there's probably a good number of people who have no idea. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you, Eugene?
Yeah, um, I basically found Yob sometime in early 2016, and yeah, I found it around that time. I guess just kind of on a random Google search. I'd been around a few months by that time, and fell in love with a lot of the blogs. I thought it was just such a huge breath of fresh air when it came to the Christianity and homosexuality issue. Like I was impressed that all the bloggers were young, 20, 30 somethings. It's not some stale site run by old people or something, and I liked how nuanced it was. And yeah, and I was following it really closely for a while. And then when the Patreon started, I was like around September 2016, I think it was. Like in the first week it started, I joined and donated on Patreon and joined the Facebook group, and just met so many of our amazing yobbers. Just seriously, some of the greatest men I've ever met, and became really active in the community. And after a while, I guess you saw how active I was and asked if I was interested in being a blogger. And I, thought about it for a bit, but then I said yes. And so, yeah, I've been blogging for Yob since like May 2017. So almost 3 years, 2 years. I don't know. I'm bad at math, but which is hard to believe. And yeah, it's been an amazing ride since then. I've been blogging a lot, and I do my own artwork for the blogs, for the featured images and various stuff in between. And it's been cool. I've gotten a lot of interaction from a lot of readers who have reached out to me, and I've met with several of them and hung out, become friends with many of them. And it's just been really cool. And turned out a couple of them lived in the St. Louis area, and I've become really good friends with them. Shout out to you guys if you're listening to this. So yeah, it's been a great ride, and it's just been a ton of fun, and I've enjoyed it quite a lot.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome that we found you and that that you do all that you do for the blog and site. I'm super grateful. I know a lot of other people are too. I was curious about your process, Eugene, because you mentioned you do your artwork for all your blogs, which is pretty cool. It's a cool dynamic that nobody else nobody else can boast on our site. I was curious about your process. How do you come up with a blog? Does it start with the blog itself? Does it start with the image? Does it go back and forth? Like how does one lead into the other?
Yeah. Well, gosh. Well, like, the main topics that I go with are, mainly they're topics that, I've either struggled with or thought about. Uh, calls I've struggled with in my personal life, or experiences I've had, or subjects I've been curious about, in regards to, issues of homosexuality, masculinity, and Christianity. And more often than not, I realize that a lot of these musings are pretty much the exact same musings that so many other gay or same-sex attracted Christians I've met have talked about. So that's one thing I realize is like a lot of my musings are pretty much the exact same as a lot of other people's musings. And so I've kind of I just wanted to explore all these various things, and also just relate to experiences I've had. And so usually like kind of the topic comes first, I suppose, and then of course I want to think about the featured image. And sometimes they come easy. It's just like, especially if it's like an emotional subject, those tend to come easier to me. But there are other times where it doesn't, and I'm just kind of struggling. Like I want to make something that looks interesting and unique and relates to the story of what I'm telling, or the subject. And is sometimes it can be a struggle. Like I think the one where I was writing about why you should find side B community, like for that one I really struggled with. I was just thinking about it for a long time. I was thinking it was going like an artsy image, but I was thinking, well, it doesn't really quite work. I don't know, intuition isn't feeling it. And I was going to bed one night, then all of a sudden, just kind of out of nowhere, suddenly I thought of like the Bob Ross parody, saying, every gay same-sex attracted Christian needs a friend, so we're going to give him one right here. And I thought about that right as I was about to head to bed. I was like, no, wouldn't you know, right when I go to bed, I think of something, and I couldn't go to sleep because I was thinking about the idea. And eventually I managed to get on that in the next couple of days. So you never know when inspiration hits you.
That is how artistry works. You will be inspired literally as you are about to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
at night. Been there time and time again. That's cool. I'm curious, what's your average work time when you combine the blog with working on the art pieces for each post? How long generally does that take?
Um, it's it again, it kind of varies. Depends on the season. Sometimes I'll come up with some really juicy material, and I just start on it and I can't stop writing, and suddenly I have like a handful of blogs I want to get out there. And sometimes I'll kind of hit a dry spell. Actually, admittedly, I kind of hit one at the end of last year where I was just like, I'm just not coming up with anything. And admittedly, sometimes like when kind of like it starts to dawn on me that it's been about almost a month or maybe even a little over a month since my last blog. It just kind of varies, I suppose, depending on what sort of like, I guess, mental season I'm in, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, you're pretty consistent, I would say, more than no shade, more than some of our other bloggers. So I appreciate that consistency, Eugene. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite blog or a favorite piece of artwork that you've done for a blog? Maybe they're the same or maybe they're different.
Hmm. Oh gosh. Well, I know my most popular blog is the bro cuddling blog. that's the one. That's the one people always tell me about when they reach out to me. That's the one blog that they always and I'd say it's a favorite of mine as well because I think it was definitely a much needed topic because I know a lot of these side B guys were getting together. They were more often than not doing this or testing the waters on how physical affection works and everything. And I know you, Tom, you'd mentioned that sadly some of those sessions had like gone wrong and all that kind of thing. And so I figured it was kind of an important thing to talk about and how it's important to establish boundaries and really kind of analyze it and see like well, obviously we have this attraction, but at the same time there are like these cultural boundaries on male affection and what have you, and what works, what doesn't. And so it's easily become my most popular blog. And yeah, and then it's I'd say it's also one of my favorites as well. But I'd say also kind of like just from a personal favorite, and I know you're a fan of this one as well, but the vampire blog, I'm an unlovable vampire. Like I think that one was easily my most emotional one. Like that definitely summed up my emotional state in the years before finding Yob, where kind of feeling like in a sense that I was kind of like a monster of sorts, and that's why people didn't like me very much. And so I think that one's been a personal favorite. That was a lot of emotional baggage I was getting out with that one. Because it's true. Because weirdly enough, like I watched a couple of like it was the Werner Herzog remake of Nosferatu, and it's a German movie, and I was like kind of always amazed by how much I felt like I sort of related to him a little bit. It's just like he's kind of the vampire is kind of a pathetic vampire, and he has Jonathan Harker at his castle, and he's trying to pass himself off as normal, even though he's kind of hungering for him, and like he accidentally cuts his finger and there's blood, and he's like oh please, the knife was rusty, it might infect you, let me just suck it out, it's the oldest known remedy. He's like no, it's not a problem. And suddenly he kind of goes crazy, and it's weird. It's just kind of weirdly this movie I really related to in that regard. So but then as for favorite featured image, well, I again kind of going back around to the Let's Talk About Bro Cuddling blog. Like that image has become kind of one of my biggest images, and it's definitely it's definitely attracted a lot of people to it. And it's interesting. And it's just like, actually, I do have a reader friend who reached out to me because he did a Google image search for men cuddling and came across my drawing. And he saw that and found Yob through that, found my blogs and everything, and reached out to me through that. And I'm just kind of going, wow, like my images are actually kind of drawing people in, so which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's always the coolest thing when people find our website through the power of the Google because it's
Right, yeah.
yeah, people find us in all sorts of ways, healthy, not so healthy things that they're Googling or searching for. But it's really cool when people find us through whatever we're putting out, including your artwork. Like, that's awesome that people have found us that way.
Oh yeah. Well, because especially like I sort of wanted to get that emotional component with my blogs as well. Like words are great, but they can only do so much. And I kind of wanted to add a visual component to add to the emotion and the topic and what have you. So I felt that added a lot.
Well, like I said, Eugene, I always enjoy it when you blog for us. You create a lot of interesting topics, a lot of relatable topics that we can all connect to. So thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Eugene, here in our remaining minutes, I definitely wanted to circle back to coronavirus because you mentioned at the top that you'd actually lost your job, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just wanted to hear how else is this affecting you? How else is this pandemic affecting you relationally, emotionally, spiritually? Yeah, what's your vantage point from where you are? Because that's the fun part about, maybe I use the word fun loosely, but it's really enlightening to hear all the different perspectives from all these different conversations I've been having the last couple of weeks. So I definitely wanted to get yours before we go.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a weird mixed bag of feelings. Like on one hand, it's like, well, when it was all starting, like I definitely I got really stressed out by it all because it was definitely really scary. And it's gotten to the point where I don't really want to look at Facebook anymore. Like, especially that first week was really terrible. It was just like all these, people posting all this stuff, saying, oh, coronavirus is going to kill everyone, or, oh, China's lying about it, or no, they're not, this, they are, and all this stuff. And, it was just stressing me out so much. And so yeah, now I'm kind of in a bit of the social isolation. I haven't really seen any of my friends for a good couple weeks. And well, it's like, well, it's not ideal, but on the other hand, it's like it's not different from anything I've experienced before. Where it's like, it's kind of like my college years in a nutshell, where I was kind of socially isolated in a lot of ways because I just couldn't make friends to save my life. So it's like in a lot of ways it feels like, well, it's just like I survived that before, so I can kind of survive this again. I mean, yeah, it's not ideal, but on the other hand, I sort of feel like I've been having all this socializing and seeing all these people and doing all this stuff, and there's kind of part of me that sort of wanted a little bit of a break from all that. Um, and so it's been nice to just get a nice healthy dosage of introvert time. Like I've said, I've gone on a lot of walks, just, doing what I can in those regards, listening to music, listening to audiobooks, taking time to be with God and prayer and maybe a bit of a meditative state. And so like, even though it's not ideal, like I feel like, it hasn't been killing me all that much.
Yeah, it's so weird because you mentioned, having a hard time making friends growing up. Like, in many ways, I feel like this whole pandemic has reverted me back to my high school self, or maybe at least my college self, where I spent a lot of my days not really interacting with anybody, just doing my business, going to school, going to class, coming home, not really socializing or interacting much with anyone. And while I have all these digital connections that I'm obviously super grateful for right now through YOB and otherwise, there's there's obviously not been a lot of physical face-to-face contact with many people during these last few weeks. And you know literally the only other time in my life that I can, or the most recent time in my life I can go back to when that was the case, was early college, when there was a lot of isolation. So it's a very strange dichotomy right now, but yeah, super grateful for all the digital friendships and contact we can still have with one another.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've definitely been taking the time to FaceTime or phone chat with a lot of my various friends from YOB and everything, and of course just various text check-ins and all that kind of thing. That does a lot of wonders. I think it really does. That really helps a lot. And I've just chatting with some dear friends and everything, and it's like it could be worse. Imagine the days before this where you'd have even more isolation. Because of the lack of that. So we are lucky in that regard that we can at least do things like this.
Yeah, for sure. If y'all haven't already thanked the Lord that this is happening in the year 2020 and not
Mm.
1973, then give some thanks today, because man, we have such an opportunity to stay connected with one another through this whole ordeal. And Eugene, thanks so much for coming on today. It's been awesome. I've met you several times now over the last few years, and yeah, I'm just like super grateful now that our listening audience can hopefully have gotten to know you a little bit better too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was glad to. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't take a another pandemic for us to have you back.
I hope not.
I mean, I hope we don't have another pandemic for a lot of reasons, but that would be one of them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Way at the top of the list, but no.
All right. Well, thanks, Eugene, again. And for anyone listening, if you're interested in our content, whether you want to check out Eugene's blogs/artwork or any of our other content, you can go to yourotherbrothers.com and follow us on all the socials at yourotherbros. Eugene, thanks for being here today.
All right. I'll see you later, Tom.
And to everybody listening, don't forget you are not alone. Even the sparrow stays at home. Stay home, y'all, but stay connected. And especially as we enter into the Easter weekend, as of this recording, yeah, take the time to stay connected with one another, but especially this weekend, take the time to stay connected with the Lord. And we'll have a special podcast coming out tomorrow to kick off Easter weekend, to close out this interesting week with all the technical snafus that we had. So stay tuned for that. Much love, my brothers.